So, welcome everyone to the Members Forum today. My name is Supriya Perera, and I would like to do a quick acknowledgement of country. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which I live and work. So, a quick overview of the floor. We have four wonderful speakers with us today, and they will each talk about their works and offer a call to action to you so that you can take action and join in. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to just chuck it into the chat. Shelley Lynn will keep an eye on our chat and pop up those questions as we go. Lynn is our wonderful timekeeper. So speakers, like I said, if you see rockets coming up, please keep an eye on that. It means 2 minutes, and we would like to wrap up so that we can have some time for some open discussion and some Q&A. So let's start with our wonderful first speaker, Wendy. So I'd love to introduce Wendy Harper. She is a transformation leadership consultant with a deep focus on inner development. She is a co-founder of the Inner Development Goals National Hub, chair of the Business Women Australia Advisory Board, and a working group member of Bhutan's National Happiness Index. Wendy guides visionary leaders to develop personal agency and resilience for mastering the art of complex transitions. She also curates immersive journeys like the collaboration game to build the inner capacity essential to achieving the global goals. As the founder of the Agency of Women, she champions the self-determined efforts of Mary Jack and the women of Vanuatu to build their social leadership capacities amid escalating climate impacts. So we are also very thrilled at WCC to announce that Wendy has taken on a role as ambassador at large. This means that Wendy will be amplifying the mission of Women's Climate Congress across diverse platforms, fostering alliances, inspiring action, and advancing women-led, earth-centered climate solutions. So over to you, Wendy.
That was a lot, a lot of intro. I'm sorry, everybody, it took so long. I just wanted to say what a wonderful opportunity it is. I'm so thrilled to be part of Women's Climate Congress community as a member of the community, but also to be able to help support this weaving and interconnectedness, especially between all the women's groups and organisations that I'm moving between. So I'm very grateful for the role, and I look forward to the stewardship and sprouting all things wonderful about Women's Climate Congress across the lands. I just wanted to just open up a space. One of the things that you know that I'm stewarding the Inner Development Goals framework into Australia, and part of the beauty of that framework is that I see the enormous amounts of effort that everybody is putting on the ground in terms of being on the cold face, so to speak, let's say the solar face, now of the change that we're in. And it's just with all the things happening in the world, maintaining hope is a very important part of keeping ourselves topped up and building the resilience that we need to keep moving through the processes of change and transformation. So I see the Inner Development Goals, and why I love them so much is that I see the incredible resource it provides us, not only to help support the development of our own inner resilience, but also that very important part of being the change we want to see in the world. And having a framework and a community of practice, especially within organizations that are already doing this incredible work, is a way to keep supporting that inner development and cultivating those inner resources so that we have more resources going out with us in the conversations and communications that we're making, and the action that we're taking. So that's, a big part of why there's many other reasons why I love them so much, but it's like that's the one that's most important for me. I just know that they're an important part of how we all can keep going. So one of the practices that you will have come across, I mean, I've done it before here, but it's just the idea of the grounding exercises of arriving, landing, creating a space and a bit of pause between everything that we've been doing all day. And this space that we're entering into is like a door into another lift and another world. And we bring so much of what we've been doing through the day into each next space. And so grounding and just taking a moment to pause and reconnect and open ourselves up to all of the possibilities and potentials that's in this space together. And so the grounding relates to, and I put in the chat, if you can scroll up to the top of the chat, there's the template for the inner development goals, which is based on being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and action. And so the grounding exercise relates to the being level of this framework. And so I invite you all now to just take a moment together with me. And if you feel comfortable to just close your eyes and feel connected, just where you're sitting, any pressure points on the chair or the seat or where you might be standing, and just feel for a moment and connect and take a breath just to feel those points. Is there any connection between your back and where you're sitting or standing, on the backs of your legs, your feet on the floor, your hands? Just get a sense of where you are and how you are being in this moment. And as you breathe in and breathe out, just feel more connected with what your body is feeling. And imagine yourself, and as you breathe, emerging from a day filled with all the activity that you've been doing. And imagine that as the ocean, and that you're just rising above that ocean of activity, busyness, and beauties and stresses. And rise above now as if you're looking down on all of that activity from today. In whatever way it's swirling around. Imagine now a pattern emerging, that in all of that activity, a coherence is happening. Where everything settles into a beautiful pattern. And within it, you can feel yourself now dropping back down into your day and feeling that coherence. Feeling that relaxation. And with love for yourself, let yourself know that everything that you've done in every way and life and person you've touched and action that you've taken is just to acknowledge yourself for that. Because you feel that coherence. Bring that gratitude for yourself into your heart. And let yourself feel that deep inside. And take another big, deep breath. And feel yourself being here now. And take all the time you need in the next few seconds to open your eyes and join the room.
Mm.
Thank you, everyone. I would just like to say with the IDGs, what we're looking forward to is that it's an emerging journey and that the Women's Climate Congress is embracing them as a forerunner and pioneer for the stewardship of the inner development goals through practice, through developing a community practice together in our own community. And how it emerges for us is up to us. I look forward to this journey of discovery with you to see how this framework can be of service to you and your aspirations and this whole community and for everything that we're doing together. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. That was absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Sorry, it's just beautiful. Are there any questions or comments or would anybody like to say anything about their experience before we move on? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that, Wendy. If it's okay with you, I will move on with our next speaker and introduce Margaret, our lovely Margaret. Margaret is a retired social worker, passionate about enabling vulnerable people to access natural places. She is also a botanical artist, creating beautiful drawings of plants, nuts, seeds, and leaves, and known too for her work as president of Darwin Creek Management Committee. Margaret is an active participant in the WCC Hub, a prime instigator for the Victorian Congress 2025, and a member of the hosting team for that event. So let's hear from Margaret.
Thank you, Supriya. And I've written what I'm going to say, which means I will be able to talk quite quickly because I don't want to put Lynn Stevens under any pressure. Being the timekeeper for the Women's Climate Congress is quite a job. So I say that there are three themes present in this presentation today. The first one is sticking with the thing. The second one is thinking globally. And the third one is acting locally. I don't even remember what network it was that sent the invitation to the WCC Congress in Canberra, but I could see that it was an important moment, particularly when I read the charter. Immediately obvious, it was such a well-written document, elegant, passionate, but with grunt, and assertive in what it was asking for. The Congress revealed to me that what it was offering was new and actually a bit confusing. A new way of addressing the climate crisis. Important it was to name the women as players and change agents. I left that conference saying loudly to the organisers that we could do something like this in Melbourne, and 2 years later, the Castlemaine Congress happened. Being part of creating Castlemaine was nerve-wracking for me because I felt responsible for having made the suggestion, but I realised that I had to stick with it. There were many valuable outcomes of the Castlemaine Congress. Outcomes about listening to women's voices. And I want to quote from the WCC Book Club 1000 Voices speaking about climate change, because there's a strong link there, and the WCC Book Club links so strongly with what we're wanting to do. So the two passages that resonate with me and with the work that the WCC does and with my environment work are as follows. And they're from the introduction that Debbie Lockwood wrote in that book. And she quotes Margaret Wheatley. I don't know much about Margaret Wheatley, but I'd say ecologist and philosopher would kind of go some way to describe her. So she says, listening as healing. So I'll just say that again, listening as healing. Great healing is available when we listen to each other. No matter what we have experienced in life, if we can tell our story to someone who listens, we find it easier to deal with our circumstance. At the conclusion of her book, Debbie concludes using the term oral history gathering. And oral history gathering is certainly what the WCC wants to do. And oral history gathering is a deeply significant way of gathering very authentic data, I believe. And so she says at the end of her book, where she's collected stories from people all around the world, that she says that we need to remind people that their voices matter. Every story is a gift, and we should treat it as such. Listening to someone's story means that you never know where it might lead. So I belong to an environment group that plants, weeds and restores the edges of a local creek called the Darebin Creek in Melbourne. Doing this work is informative. It is a practical application of my belief about needing to care for country, and it is also pleasurable. I meet a range of people with varying backgrounds and energy who do this work. Often when we plan an event where we would like 15 to 20 people to turn up to assist, sometimes we get 5 or 10, and I again apply the idea of sticking with it. Whoever turns up, it's fine. I've been doing this work for about a decade now, and I'm often rewarded looking at the plants that are now grown and established, and I am glad that I stuck with it. So thinking about going globally, but acting locally, the world and the world news is hard and distressing, but important, and I have to keep myself as informed as possible. Otherwise, I feel like I'm opting out. But then I allow myself the experience of acting locally. And my hands-on environment work and my WCC work, that is where I feel real and effective. Talking to people who turn up to the Friends of the Darebin Creek and engage, and with the WCC, the women I have met there have given me knowledge, information, reciprocal friendships, purpose, and meaningful tasks. And I'll again mention the importance of the book club. The book club introduces me to books that I wouldn't have known about and probably would not have sought. But when you belong to a book club and you get told you've got to read this book by a certain time, it's a great motivator and it's very rewarding. So sometimes acting locally for me can mean I'm going to take a bag when I go for a walk down by the creek and pick up rubbish and cigarette butts. But there are other times when I say, no, this is not a walk to be picking up rubbish. This is just a walk for me. So in conclusion, I just want to mention the important ways of being in the world. And I've added another 2, so there are 5. 1 is to stick with a thing. 2 is to think globally and become informed. 3 is to act locally because it really nurtures me. 4 is to challenge the status quo, and many of the women in the WCC have heard me talk about challenging the status quo. The trouble with challenging the status quo is I often not sure when I recognise when I need to challenge the status quo, but it's in my mind and I try hard to recognise at a time when I can protest. And the 5th is I challenge my feelings about the idea of imposter syndrome. And there are very many smart women in the world who have used this term. I've spoken about Jenny Robinson, the international lawyer who did the pro bono work for Julian Assange. She said she had experienced imposter syndrome. And the book club we're reading about Jacinda Ardern, and she had the same experiences. However, I'm about to say to you to think about not being an imposter, and you haven't got a syndrome. You belong in the world and you are a very valuable member of this planet. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. You belong in this world. Love it. Thank you, Margaret. That was just absolutely wonderful. If there are any questions, please post that in our chat for Margaret. I'll start with one of mine. So you've done so much work in your local area. What has kind of been the standout for you? What has been the most sort of memorable experience that you've had in around the creek, the Darabin Creek that you have been a caretaker of and picking up rubbish but also doing some administrative duties? What's been the most standout?
I think it is the times when you never know who's going to turn up to an event, and I meet such interesting and unusual people, and you never quite know what kind of conversations you're going to have, but that it really is a treasure to look forward to the people. And the planting is important, but it's secondary to recognising that I'll be doing this with a bunch of other human beings who also belong in the planet.
On the chat, Deborah mentions you are champion, Margaret. The Darabin Creek and its community of critters, human and non-human, is a better place for your contribution. That is so wonderful. Yes, there's definitely the non-humans involved, right? Around the creek that we kind of forget, the plants, the animals. Have you seen anything interesting?
We're about to do platypus spotting. Platypus in urban creeks have disappeared a long time ago for all the reasons that you would understand, with the toxins and the street rubbish that flows into the creek, but restoring the creek does help. And a couple of years ago, a platypus was spotted in the creek, and there was an argument about whether it was a sock or whether it was a platypus. But it was a platypus because there's a photo. Anyway, the restoration work in the southern part of the Darabin Creek has improved to such an extent that the Friends group are organising a dawn and dusk platypus spotting where you have to go and sit by the edge of the creek and you're not allowed to talk. Woohoo! I love not talking, and
Yes.
watch to see whether there's any platypus.
That's lovely. Sock or platypus. So Shelley's asked a question. We understand you've been talking to the Alphington CWA, which feeds into our Rural Women's Program. How did that go?
Yeah, it was a wonderful coincidence. Justine McDonough came to Castlemaine as the representative of the Alphington CWA. And for those who live in Victoria and know where Alphington is, it's a kind of a contradiction in terms, because to live in Alphington, you're probably living in a $3 or $4 million house. But those women were pretty gutsy. I went down there on Monday night, and I'm expecting we will hear more from them. Liz Courtney, thank you very much for that lovely, quick, smart sort of summary that you gave me that I could speak to them about, so I didn't sort of go wandering all over the place. And they paid the WCC $200 for the half-hour talk that I gave, and I got a beautiful handmade, I don't know, oven cleaner, I think it was. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's very lovely. So I think we'll hear more from them. Justine, who came, I'm going to keep in touch with her. They were very aware of the similarities between the WCC Rural Women's Project and their own principles. So we'll keep in touch with them and keep sort of driving that with them.
Wonderful. Janet has a question for you. You brought the idea of challenging the status quo to the Victorian Congress in Castlemaine. How did we go? Only answer if you want to, she says.
Well, I'm worrying about Lynn Stevens getting anxious with looking at the clock. No, she's giving me the thumbs up. I think that the whole structure of the 2 days with panels of women of all ages and disciplines and experiences certainly challenged the status quo, with the idea that when you have congresses or conferences, this hierarchy of specialist speakers and that sort of way of doing things, that did not happen. And it did not happen in the 2022 Congress, which I still sort of dine out on that story of all those women from those different political parties being able to manage being on a platform talking together about their similar and different ways of seeing things. Go Wendy Harper. Yay. So, yeah, I think, sometimes I think I don't know how to challenge the status quo, and sometimes I think I probably do it more than I know. And I think probably the Women's Climate Congress challenges the status quo all the time. I mean, Janet, she's on the Christmas card list with Mark Butler. She challenges him all the time.
That's amazing. Thanks, Margaret.
Chris Bowen, I think you mean.
Oh, do I? Yeah,
Maybe.
him.
Thanks, Janet. There's a lot of love for you and Wendy's talk, Margaret. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Please, read through all the lovely comments coming through. I will move on to our next lovely speaker, Liz. We can now move the spotlight.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Good evening to everyone across Australia, and thank you, Supriya, for being a wonderful host tonight. Just by way, I am engaged with the WCC on the steering committee this year. My background, for those who may not have known you, just a quick backgrounder, is that I spent about 20 years in communications before I moved into film, and I have directed the largest number of climate films in the world as a female director. So I'm very pro all the work that we as women do out there. And last year I was given the award for Women Changing the World in Media, a global award in the UK. So I'm really thrilled to be able to bring some of my skills to help the Women's Climate Congress. I feel very committed to it. Amazing what Janet had a vision for, and that we all come together in a circle to support that vision. I think that when we had this intersection of Castlemaine, and then we had an intersection of looking at just the next 3 or 4 years of strategy work and where WCC wanted to be, could be, where some of the others in the marketplace were, like Weller and Million Women and Canna and others, we were really trying to see what is so special about WCC and where WCC can expand, can really get movement and make impact. And one of the things that really came to us as in a circle of conversation came out of Castlemaine and came out of some women who were talking to us and just saying, like, we would really love to bring something like this on a local basis into our community. Could you help us? How could we do something meaningful with a circle of women in Bendigo? How could we do it in other locations? And so that made us sit down and think the power of women's circles in the rural sector, and also the impact that the changing climate system is having on women in the rural sector. And so those two things really intersected, and then brought with it this idea that we're forming about the Rural Women's project. So just with that backdrop, I wanted to take you through just really briefly a quick video that we have lined up, and I just have to get the right one if I can find it. And is there a way I will just share this?
Yeah, you should be able to just share it.
So let me just go to share, and
Perfect.
I think it's already been playing quite fast. So I'm just going to play this little video. If it goes too fast, I've turned the sound off so you can just see the words, and I'll just take you through it. Then the whole idea was just to have some open conversation, a few questions in the circle of women here tonight, that you may have questions, ideas, contributions as we start to form some circles of women from the rural sector to listen to what they feel they need and want. And what we're looking at doing is between September and December, doing those listening circles, also looking to find some sponsorship and to find women who would like to put their hand up as we start to trial possibly 4 or 5 locations in 2025. I want to stress again that the listening circles are really important. We're not city people going into the rural sector saying this is what we think you should do. We're saying, could you tell us what you think you need, and we'll help you to do that. So I just wanted to be very mindful that that's our approach. And this is a quick little video that will take you through the program. I don't know if you can see the grassroots of it. That is the overview. These are some of the project's leaders that are involved in it. These are some of the pilot programs we're thinking to look at. Why rural women? I think it's really important to just realize that rural women have quite a shoulder to lean on for their partners and for those that are being impacted by climate. And they're usually the first ones to put their hand up to help when there's been an extreme event that's happened, or the first to volunteer. And they're really key in the resilience in the farming community. These are some background statistics. So these are some of the themes we're looking at exploring. Again, I say we're exploring them because we're listening. We're listening to see if any of these are things that they wish to bring into their circle in the rural sector. Climate and health, climate anxiety and recovery, both within their family, their community, and also with young children and next generation. Accelerating energy shifts. Are they concerned about it? Do they feel that they've got knowledge gaps? Are there things that they want to work out how to have those conversations that are neither left or right, just factual? Female leadership in changing climate, what the female voice is in shaping policies for rural women in the changing climate system, and what it's going to take to build a rural knowledge hub for women to be able to share in that rural setting. These are some of the project ideas that we, again, have thought of. This is what we want to take out and listen to, and to see if any of these they feel are what they would want to take in. There might be 1 or 2. We may end up rewriting them all. We are just starting with some ideas, and we really want to listen to what the rural women feel that they need. We're aiming to have 5 local leaders in 5 rural towns create the listening and learning circles, identify programs in each location with a goal to have 3 or 4 next year. We want to train a local leader with a toolkit and some online modules. With those online modules, some of the digital content we'll create will be video recording on how to do things, how to approach conversations so they can have an easy toolkit to watch and learn. And we'll use Canva, the free version, so that they can just learn how to drop in a date or a location, and then they can print it out or send it out, make it as simple as possible. And we want to deliver both that local, but also think about that national engagement over 2025, 2026. So that's a very fast summary, but the grassroots is that WCC wants to drive climate resilience. We're looking to empower rural women to lead locally and have a voice, and we're looking at scalable modelling that we can develop and getting investment that will help accelerate the delivery and the impact. And that's the end of that. So coming back to any conversations and opening it up for questioning.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. If anybody has any questions for Liz, please feel free to drop it into the chat.
Can I just, sorry, I'm just butting in slightly quickly to say that, because we had a little bit of chatter in the chat about the fact that we do have captions or transcripts enabled here. And if anyone needs that to see what's being said, right, because of hearing, there's the show captions button at the bottom of the screen, and you can just click on that and get a transcript of all of the conversation that we're having. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess Zoom really allows for that, right? Just you can lean on those options. Sometimes live events, you just can't cater for captioning and any hearing difficulties. So I hope that works for you. So Mary has posted, Mary Picard, yes, I'm very keen to get one of these rural women's listening circle groups going in Portland, Victoria, not South Australia.
Make it as being happening, Mary. And I learned that Portland is in Victoria, not South Australia. So thanks for that one.
Barbara asked, do you have any links with the CWA?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We just heard that Margaret's been to speak to the CWA, and we have other links too. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Margaret, for speaking last night too. We really appreciated it.
Deborah, did you want to talk to your question? Otherwise, I'm just reading out everyone's, so we can have a bit more conversation.
Yeah. I think that process that was used by the Women's Trust called the kitchen table conversations seems like a very similar model that you're talking about, and they a way of informing and engaging women in a process of understanding issues more strongly, and if it's climate issues, that would be fantastic. But I also think that the Rural Women's Network that is run through the Department of Agriculture might be a useful link. I'm not sure if it's just Victoria or whether it's national.
Janet, did you want to speak to the 2 groups that we've already had conversations with?
We've had conversations like this morning. Liz and Mary Pickard and I met with Kelly MacDonald, who's the CEO of the National Rural Women's Coalition, which is one of the government-funded alliances, women's alliances. So they're an overarching organisation, has a number of rural women's organisations that belong to that overarching alliance. And and Kelly's very keen to collaborate with us. We've also spoken with another organisation which is called the Rural Woman, that has a different approach. I mean, they are running skills upskilling sort of activities with rural women right across the country. We've actually got thousands and thousands of members. And so we're also talking to them about how we might be able to collaborate with them. So we also have got 2 or 3 connections with the CWA. I'm just noticing that Sarah Lutman, who is on here in the chat, and we're hoping that she's going to join our little group to look at Sarah's based in the Hunter Valley. So that's
And it was Rebel that we spoke with from Rural Women too.
Yeah, Rebel Black, yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
So yeah.
So we look forward to reporting back further on how we start to progress this over the next 3 months, and we welcome comments and feedback along the way.
Yeah.
Got the rockets, Lynn.
Yeah,
All good.
And also a heart, Liz. Hearts.
Any final questions? Anybody wants to jump on camera before we move on?
Yes.
Oh, you muted yourself, Wendy.
Gosh, there you go. I just had that question, Liz, about, seeing, like, I haven't learned enough yet about the project, but is there thoughts about how it's going to, like, extend and provide that connectivity as it extends?
Yeah, there is. Good question. Didn't want to take up too much time, but the thing is that once a quarter, all the groups will come together in an open Zoom forum, and each group is going to be chatting about what they've learned, what they've been doing. So there's going to be a real sharing within that circle of projects that each of them have been working on, what they've found, what they've learned, and what could be repeated in other towns. So we are looking to make those connections once we feel that the infrastructure in each of the locations has got itself up and moving and we've got the ground floor built.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Liz. That was wonderful. And thanks everyone for your questions. We could continue chatting with Liz and keep asking, but let's move on to our next wonderful speaker, Deborah. I'd like to introduce Deborah. Deborah Crossing is an inaugural member of the Women's Climate Congress and a former secondary school science and mathematics teacher. Sorry. With a major in geology, she has held a diverse range of roles in science education and has also gained experience in industry, bringing a broad perspective to STEM learning and advocacy. So over to you, Deborah.
Thank you very much, Supriya, and thank you to the inspiration of the previous speakers as well. And thank you for having me yet again. I'm delighted to be here. Those of you that have met me before know that I have an interest in what are the policy drivers that do or do not work for our country and for the world, and contributing to the country about addressing climate change. And one of the things, so I'll just share my screen. I've got a PowerPoint somewhere. Here we go. Sorry about this, it's just disappeared. It's making it a little bit tricky. Oh, see that's. Here we go. Okay, so out of all of that has come, we've got this Energy Policy Lab. And prior to today's session, members were encouraged to ask questions, and there have been a number, which is fantastic. I've done my best to answer those in the Action Network. But Mary's question came in first, and it was a good way for me to sort of structure what I would like to share with you today. And to summarise her question, it was about the accepted view that gas is to replace coal, and will continue to be needed despite the fact that it makes it more difficult with net zeros. And with that, she asked 2 questions. Is this gas dependence the concept of failure of imagination within the sector? And I assume that means the fossil fuel industry. And are there ways to imagine a complex system of renewables and batteries? So there's short answers to these. And first one, it's probably not a failure. They just have a great desire to keep their current business model going. Change is difficult and they want to keep making as much money as possible. So I do know that a number of fossil fuel companies have delved into alternatives already, you know, so it's not like they don't know that they can't do it. And are there ways to make the complex system of batteries, etc.? And it is possible. And I think South Australia is one of the standouts that's having some success with that, with doing all of their solar panels, batteries, the big batteries, and starting to bring those up into connecting with the solar panels as well. So, but it's a bit more complicated than that and perhaps not quite as easy either. So there are some things to consider in looking at these answers, and they have sort of been touched on in the last presentation as well. And the WCC acknowledged acknowledged that gas is needed for firming for electricity production for a while. I talked a little bit about coal and gas for industrial purposes because that's different from producing electricity, the role of research and development and lead times, and also incentives and disincentives to make the fossil fuel industry change how they go about doing things. And so last time, what's happened since, the Murrujuga National Park has had a World Heritage listing, sorry, a bit tongue-tied tonight. I'll take a big deep breath and settle myself down, which is good. The federal court ruled the government delay in a decision requested by Rayleigh and Cooper about this art was unreasonable, and the government must make a declaration for permanent protection of that art. So there's a couple of wins there, which is good to acknowledge. There is no news, though, or I haven't found any, on the restrictions to be placed by the Australian government on the West Shelf. So hopefully, always the optimist, that the World Heritage listing and the ruling about the art prompts them to tighten up or make those restrictions as strong as possible. In dealing with all of, and since then we've had the Economic Reform Roundtable as well, and a number of things that have come out of that, and I know Janet will talk about that a bit more, but there's, you know, one of them is that the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act will be looked at. And I like the word reform because it means that they're looking at ways of improving things. These are the acts and things that we talked about that I shared with you last time. The safeguard mechanism, which is about sort of limiting some of those emissions. Talked about the differences, constitutional differences between state and territories and the Commonwealth. And that's sort of a bit of a problem sometimes for our country. States can do one thing, the Commonwealth can't, etc., etc. We talked about gas as a firming resource. And, excuse me, at this stage, only 15% of Australia's gas from WA is reserved for domestic use. And it's for WA, not for the eastern states. And there has been some talk about putting something like that in for the eastern states, but it's actually, nothing's happened about it yet, you know, so it's not there. And because I ran out of time, I only very briefly mentioned the Petroleum Resources Rent Tax. And I'd like to have a bit of a go at sharing some of that. And this is the upshot of this very poorly designed tax. It's been around for quite some time, and it was designed to sort of give the Commonwealth government some money the resources that are actually Australian resources. It takes, and Kirsten asked a wonderful question about this, about why does it take so long to get any of that money, and why is it so little as well? So that full answer is up on the Action Network if you would like to read it. But every other country, you can see with Saudi Arabia, Norway, Qatar, they actually get money from that. Australia gets very, very little from it, and which is a shame, because we could do all sorts of things to improve equality in our nation, fund services that we all need, support research and development into new ways of having greener energy sources, better ways of using what we have as well. And there's this wonderful quote that has been verified by Richard Dennis in August this year. The Australian government takes more money from uni students than it collects from than it collects from the tax, sorry, which is, to me, is just, I don't know, yep. It makes my blood boil. It means that Australia and Australians are being very, very shortchanged as well. So if we did that, we could perhaps, get a lot more traction and activity around to mitigate our climate change. I was going to talk a little bit about the difference between gas for energy and gas for industry, and to take you back to your kitchen stove. Those of you who got gas cooktops, it became very preferable to an electric cooktop in the old days, because gas can be instantaneous. You can control it really easily. You can turn it on really easily. You can turn it off really quickly. And that's why there's often an argument put forward that gas is needed as a firming resource for industry. And earlier on this year, I went to a tour of a local brewery in South Australia, but it's known nationally, and that's Coopers. And they have done a lot with their new brewery to use renewable energies, minimise their waste, do all sorts of really good things for climate change and for the environment. But they still have to use gas in the actual processes of making that beer, because of the reasons that I just said about gas. And so when there is something that can replace that energy source for industrial production that has those qualities, then we'll get even a lesser need to be able to extract gas as well. So it's unfortunate that, just back to South Australia, that the wireless steelworks needs to find a new owner, because the previous owner didn't pay his debts. Mm-hmm. And that meant that the hydrogen project that was going to be attached to that has been stopped for the moment. Some people would say that it's been scrapped altogether. I hope that it won't be. It's just that it's been delayed for, because it's just not possible to do. So there are things in the pipeline that could be used as a better energy resource, particularly for industry. So this brings me to some of those levers for change. We've already talked about those that the policies and acts from the previous session. Petroleum resources rent tax, and these are two articles that you were provided links with. The second one is quite a deep dive. The first one is sort of a bit more of a summary. Touched a little bit on royalties and taxes. So there's still that federation thing that is going on as well. Certainly company tax on profits was raised at the Economic Reform Roundtable as well. And the difference between onshore and offshore. So it is hard. I've just talked about the policies already raised. How or what can we change? I found an article up recently, The Challenge of Fossil Fuel Interests in Politics. It's hard, and we're not making a great deal of progress. So I encourage you to have a look at that. Also, this challenge of the concept of continual economic growth. And there was a link in the invitation to this session that looks at that, but another way of flipping it around as well. These are some of the things that we could do. Redesign all of our taxes, and that could be a disincentive, especially with the resource rent tax for some fossil fuel companies. You know, we need to have our taxes work so that we can incentivise new green energy sources and methods of production, and also the research, and also being able to take research to market. The scientists can do, and engineers can come up with all good things, but often then it has to be upscaled. And what we don't have is a mineral resources rent tax. Not quite so. Mining uses energy and it uses water, so it has an effect on our environment and on our emissions. But again, Australia is not getting much back for all of that. The minerals resource rent tax was put forward sort of in the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd era, and it became a super profits tax. And there was a very, very strong lobby from the Minerals Council and other industry members to get it scrapped. And so again, we've missed out on having money to be able to provide proper services and to put money into development to reduce our emissions as well. And of course, we've already touched on emissions targets and carbon tax. And certainly Ken Henry, in the lead up to the Economic Reform Roundtable, put those forward again as well. So to go back to Mary's question, do we lack imagination? I don't think we do. I don't think Australia does. I think it lacks a lot of courage to make these really hard decisions about what needs to be done to make it better for everyone. So I've got another slide. Yep. Oops, it is. Yep. I'm just going to go back.
Thank you for that, Deborah. There are comments and questions pouring in on the chat. If you wanted to take that, answer them in the chat. We might, for time saving purposes, move on to our final speaker, Janet. But thank you so much. That was just absolutely amazing to
I
hear.
just add, if I could, one thing about courage, and back to Wendy's IDGs, the fifth one is about courage and change. And I think, therefore, that as individuals, will I have the courage to call out my geological friends when they talk about the industry and what it does or doesn't do? And as an organisation, are we going to have that courage? I think we do, and I'm sure we can do it. Thanks, Supriya.
Thank you for that. That's just wonderful. We, I know Mary and Liz and everyone, Carolyn, you've got so many wonderful comments happening there. Perhaps, Deborah, you can jump onto the chat. Our last, sorry.
Here we go. I've just lost the chat. Stop share. There we go.
That should bring it back. Thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
So Janet needs no introduction. She is going to be presenting Parliamentary jottings.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see everyone. I do feel as if I want to keep Deborah's conversation going a little bit longer, but maybe just to say that I might just have yes, I definitely think courage is hugely important, but I also think maybe with my slightly more sort of arty sort of mind, that we do lack imagination. Imagination is a huge part. So we need to be able to imagine, and we did a bit of this work in Castlemaine in our futures workshop, and I'd love to be able to run that futures workshop again, maybe in a more relaxed way, because it was a little bit compressed for time in Castlemaine, to really be able to imagine a different future. And one of the things that, and this is related to what I'm going to say about Parliament, one of the things that's happening in relation to thinking about COP31 coming to Australia in 2026 is that women's organisations are coming together, and we're making a big thing about we must have women's representation and women's voices, but women also need to find their voice and bring this new type of imagination to the table. It's not just being at the table, it's sort of redesigning the table. And I suppose this is the sort of work that we want to do in this network that we're building and connecting with other networks of women so that we can bring a new agenda. And it is what we tried to do with the Charter. I mean, the Charter is a humble first sort of offering to say what things we might want to change. So yes, that's what we want to build on in the conversations we have in this circle and in the circles we have in the rural and regional women and in the Parliament, and of course being well informed, and this is why the work that Deborah's been doing is so good to actually understand these policies a little bit is really good for us, because then when we're talking to people, we can feel that we are coming from a kind of a knowledgeable basis that we can have these conversations. So thank you, Deborah. So what have we been up in the Parliament? Well, it seems like since the 48th Parliament got back to sitting a month ago or so, we've been stalking the halls of Parliament. I feel like quite like I've become a lobbyist because we've sort of, in the first two sitting weeks, we were there almost every day, to a couple of us. So we're working on a project to speak to women parliamentarians. Of course, there's lots of them and lots of new ones, to encourage them to form a multi-party stakeholder group. We've talked about this before, but with a particular focus on climate action. And we've sort of put this to them. Now, I might, I'll put a link in the chat if I can do it at the same time as I'm talking. We've created a sort of a one-page little lobby document that we've been sharing with them. But the interesting thing is that if there are many women's multi-party groups around the world, about 90 or so other apparently, but Australia's never had one. And if they did form this one that has a focus on climate action, that would actually absolutely be a world first, and it would be a really good preparation for Australia hosting COP31, because they will be able to bring the representation of women in the broader community into the conversations leading into COP31. So in the last two lots of sitting weeks, and we've got some more meetings actually, we've probably spoken to about 16 women parliamentarians so far, and they've been a number of ALP women, a number of independents, 1 or 2 Greens, and 2 so far Liberals. And they're all quite interested in this idea. They're a little bit it's quite a fragile process, as you can imagine, but some are very enthusiastic, including one of the Liberals, Senator Maria Kovacic. And some of them are a bit more like, well, yeah, we'd probably come along, but we're not quite sure. But we think the next step is to hopefully host a breakfast. At the moment, we're looking at one of the lots of sitting weeks in October to host a breakfast to bring all the women, all the interested ones together to sort of see what the next steps might be to form this group. So that's how that's going. Meanwhile, and I'll put up a link to or maybe Lynn, could you put up a link to our news page? On our news page, there's a couple on the website, that is. There's a couple of submissions that we've made recently. The first one was a submission to the Economic Roundtable. What have I done with it? I thought I had it here. Oh dear, I don't. Hang on, I might have to just go and find it. Which we, here we go. No, that's not it. Hang on. Which we made a big point about, as Deborah has mentioned, and I mean, essentially, we have to decouple economic growth from emissions, because if we keep if we keep growing economically and creating a larger economy with more industrial goods produced, then even if we have a larger percentage of renewable energy, we're still using a lot of fossil fuels, because the total of all of that energy is increased. So at some point or other, we actually do have to decouple economic growth from emissions, so we can have emissions reduction happening, even if there is still growth or whatever. And that isn't happening yet. And that's why, even though the world, Australia and other countries, talk about these huge amounts of renewable energy that we're putting into the system, like in Australia, it's up to 40 something percent, 43, 45%, but we're still, our emissions actually aren't really coming down very fast. And that's true globally as well. So we do need some imagination, both in Australia and globally, about how to change some of our economic levers in a more sort of a more substantive way. And so we made that point in our submission. And we also talked about women's leadership. I mean, it's well known that women's participation in the workforce and in leadership actually increases productivity. And so it's really important for women to be not only coming to the table, but, as I said earlier, redesigning the table. So we put up in our submission some thoughts about that, which did include the multi-party, the suggestion for the multi-party women's group. And also we've also made a suggestion that, to mark the historic moment that we actually have very close to gender parity for the first time in the Parliament, there should actually be a major women's summit. And when I actually attended an ACT roundtable, economic roundtable, and I talked to Katie Gallagher about this idea, and she's quite keen on the idea, but she did say to me that she didn't think that Prime Minister, she was going to talk to the Prime Minister about it, but she wasn't hugely hopeful. But maybe we need to find some other way of approaching that and putting up a proposal. So those are, oh yes, and the other thing that we have done in the last while is we have sent a letter to Susan Lee, which is also on the news page. Has the link to the news page gone into the?
It's gone up, Janet.
So there's a link there. So what happened was, one of our members who lives in Adelaide, Deborah lives in Adelaide, but this is another member called Tony Hassan. She happened to be walking along Glenelg Beach one day, and Susan Lee was giving a press conference, and it was a typical sort of press conference where she actually admitted how sort of heartfelt, how bad it was to see this terrible the death of all these marine creatures, and how that, is a terrible thing, and that was actually being caused by climate change. But then, as these things do, very quickly went on to sort of starting to blame the government for not doing more about the bloom, blah, blah. So Tony actually sort of suggested, and was very kindly let us use some of her words in a letter to Susan Lee, where we are suggesting that the party should really try and work together. And there are opportunities, for instance, in South Australia for the Liberal Party to sort of reach out to the farming community, which was some of their constituents, and sort of work with them based on the shared love that we all feel for the environment and the grief for the loss of all the marine creatures. And it would be much a better way of doing politics to try and rally people together around the ground that we have, and to work together to find the solutions, than just falling into the typical sort of political polarization. So you can read the letter we sent to Susan Lee. I thought it was quite a good letter, but unfortunately at this point we haven't had a reply. So that might be about what I was going to share. from our parliamentary work in the last little while. If anybody else has anything to offer or ask about that. Oh, maybe I should just note that in relation to preparing for COP31, and I alluded earlier to this collective of women's organisations that WCC is now part of, and Mary Pickard is working with me on that now. That group of women's organisations is in quite close contact with the Department of Climate Change and Energy through their UNF negotiation branch, or particularly their public engagement and gender person, who's a man, actually a really lovely man called Jared Huntley, and hoping to organise a sort of a roundtable event in October to discuss women's issues that are the beginning of framing up what we want to ask the government to do. But one of the things that the WCC has tried to inject into that conversation quite strongly is that we want consultation with women. We want sort of a broad scale consultation with women across the country to find out what women really want and what our priorities are to bring to COP31. So fingers crossed that we can move forward with that a bit. So that's probably about all I have to offer. Got 5 minutes in hand, so back to you, Supriya, or back to the...
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. That's a lot. That's a lot, Janet. That's all just amazing. There's so much chatter happening in the comment section in the chat.
Yeah, I have to say there hasn't been a reply from Minister Watt. That's disappointing, and it is on my to-do list to follow that up. I mean, initially I think it was because he did say that he wasn't going to make any further comment until the time frame for Woodside to respond was up, but I think to be honest, I'm not quite sure where that's up to, apart from the fact that I do know the government's now under pressure to respond to Raylene Cooper's Section 10, this is under the Environmental Protection Act, bid to properly protect the rock art. Yeah, so I probably need to follow up with Minister Watt and probably with Susan Lee again, seeing she hasn't. I mean, I get that you get this sort of standard reply to say they've received it, but no further. I also sent the letter that we sent to Susan Lee to Angie Bell, who I think is the Shadow Environment Minister, and we do have a meeting with her advisor next week, I think it is. Yeah, so anyway, little steps.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions that they want to jump on, or comments that you want to jump on your video? Unmute yourself, ask. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up with a few next events.
I think Wendy's got her hand up.
Wendy?
Just on that, Janet, I mean, one of the things that I've been finding useful, and a number of people who are kind of in the impact space, is using AI to propose the challenge. Like, there is this challenge of getting that impact into Parliament, into government, into politicians, and sometimes the direct approach is not what's in the interest for them. So I'm just wondering have we experimented yet with putting the problem to AI to see what strategies AI might come up with to make these efforts more successful, given we're putting the effort in, not me personally, but your efforts and everybody who's going for this very, very important and strategic area. I'm just wondering, have you played around with it?
I haven't. I mean, it's obviously worth playing around with, but I'm a bit worried that AI is a bit based on the status quo because all of the data that's been uploaded into AI that it's basing its answers on is sort of come from the patriarchal past. Women aren't terribly well represented, apparently. Anyway, it's certainly worth playing around with to see, because
it's interesting. I haven't found it depends on how it's used. There's a lot of research out that supports everything we're talking about, and it's that research that is also available there to be tapped into. And so it really just depends you know, the mindset of the person and the people asking the question is what will come back to. So I found it, like I have been finding it extremely useful to stimulate, not to answer, but to stimulate creative thinking about how we could approach problems in a different way and how we can tap into the self-interest of others so that what's important, like as a way to open the door to conversations. Yeah, because sometimes I don't get it right and
Yeah. So
I miss the opportunity because I didn't frame it in a way that the other person could see how it was relevant to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all. Thank you.
So at the beginning, Shelley said that we were going to all sort of come up with some things that people could go away and do. Well, for me, it would be to read those recent submissions that we've had and our proposal for the links that we just put in the chat. And I mean, if you are on any kind of friendly terms with your local MP, if it's a woman, please feel free to discuss our proposal with them about why it is important for women to work together, and it isn't necessarily a partisan thing to bring a gender lens to climate action.
Thank you for that. Thank you to all our speakers this evening. I know we've gone a little bit over time because of technical difficulties, but I'm sure AI will save us at some point and we won't have any more technical difficulties ever in the future. But that's just me being a little bit silly. So a couple of dates for you to mark in your calendar. Next events, book club will be on the 29th of September. As Margaret said, it is wonderful. Please come along to that. The Members Forum, it might be on the 15th of October, the next one, or the 22nd of October, to be decided. So mark that in your calendar. It might be the last one for the year. 29th of September again. Oh, it's repeated there. Also, the AGM is going to be in November. So please come along to that. And also a personal ask. On the 17th of October evening, through my other hat with the Moonee Valley Sustainability, we are looking for speakers. So with Moonee Valley Sustainability, Sustainability Victoria, the Yarra Energy Foundation, and Electrify Yarra, I'm organizing Saul Griffith's electrification talk and book tour, and it's going to happen right in Richmond Town Hall here in Melbourne. So if you happen to be here and you want to get up on stage, you have a few minutes to do a quick talk to a crowd of 200 attendees that are expected that evening. So please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. Or if you know somebody that is an expert on or a lived experience person on electrification, that would be great. So thank you, everyone. And if anybody, yeah. Janet?
I might just quickly mention, because you reminded me now, that also Melbourne's getting all the dibs at the moment, but I'm speaking at a Women in Sustainability conference in Melbourne on the 11th of November. We'll send around details about it, but it's being organised by quite a big organisation called Impact X, and it's got quite a lot of women leaders and things speaking there, and so I'm honoured to be asked to speak there. So we'll send around details about that.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing off call now.
Thank you, Supriya. That was great. Thanks. Thanks all the speakers. It was really great.
Thanks,
evening.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.
The recording stopped? No, not yet. Can't hear you. You're on mute.